Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Hold My Beer version where we don't have any real thing planned to say anything specific. We're just going to talk the shit because we had so much incredible response from the world. All the world wrote in.
The world, the whole world.
Because we hit some really interesting pain points for a lot of people in South Africa and around the world. And so we thought we'd hold a second version of the Hold My Beer series. And so we've also, as per our agreement last time, we decided to invite a fourth guest on so we don't fall into groupthink trapping because there's lots of agreement happening. And so with that guest today is Brett Sinclair. Brett, welcome to the show, buddy.
I just don't agree with you, bud. Was I meant to start that quick?
There you go. See, this is why
you read the brief. Do not agree with us. We stuck in this information bubble. Must say no.
Yeah.
So I'll just follow everything with a no and a fuck you. There we go.
Perfect. That's cool? Exactly what we're here for. Okay, great. So, Rich, why don't we borrow what we did the last time? So, Rich, why don't you introduce Brett, or do you want to do it that way? Or Brent, do you want to introduce Brett?
Brent probably knows me best.
Okay.
Well, I want to introduce Brett. So firstly, I'm going to pose this in an interesting way, maybe, right? So if I had to ask Rich and Matt, what has been the biggest technical revolution in the last 6-8 months? What would your answer be?
AI.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Brett, in his wisdom, 4 years ago, started a business with a .ar URL, and the tagline was called "Making AI Work." Now, if anyone I know has a business that should be catching the biggest fucking wave in terms of good timing, should be Brett, right? Should be Brett. So the question is, between the pouring the beer behind him and doing the AI stuff, I'm curious to know whether the AI wave is a real wave or whether this is just all smoke and mirrors. Okay, so let's start with that. So firstly, well done for reading the room 4 years too early. And I'm curious to know how that's working out for you. Hey?
Yeah. Can we also? So we were just talking a little bit earlier. What's frustrating me at the moment? I think full stop entrepreneurship. And you read all these LinkedIn memes and everything, and it is a non-stop hands in or head in hands moment. It's the biggest roller coaster of one's life, and this making AI work, it was pretty obvious, right? It was it was obviously going to happen. I don't know if, there was the Gen AI part kind of got all the CEOs on board and got everyone excited about it. Cool. Got all the budgets there because there was no budgets before. So that's really awesome. Catching the wave. That's harder than one says, because this wave is full of everyone's an expert on autonomous AI. Everyone's like I'm just looking at keynote speakers. I've got a show for Gen AI, and all the people that were on the show previously talking about nothing to do with Gen AI are now experts. And so, yeah, let's see. Is it a big wave? I think it is. Is the technology right? Fuck yes. This technology is insane. Is business ready for it? No. What cycle are we on getting it right? Well, I think people are still trying to figure out where do they spend their money and how do they spend their money. Yeah, so it's interesting. The .ai part, you know how hard it is to get a .ai?
It's probably not as hard as getting a .com though.
Did we get a .? No, I don't think we got anywhere near a .com.
I got .wtf. Which I'm very proud of.
Ooh, nice.
What, .com?
Nice.
WTF.com.
No. So our little short URL for missing link, we want to do short links. When you do short links, is msng.wtf. Like that is a legitimate top level domain that you can get.
Yeah. Very cool.
So Brett, can I just jump on this thing here? So this wave analogy, I'm going to take it a bit step further, right? So for you middle-aged white guys, that's all of us, there's a great YouTube channel called Maui Surfers. And it's basically a bunch of women in bikinis strutting on the beach and then paddling out and surfing. Now, let's use that analogy as entrepreneurship. You watch these beautiful women catch these amazing waves and surf in, and they make it look easy, right? Now, that's the trick. The wave is there, But actually catching the wave and then standing up and making it look easy, that is a small percentile of people. And I think when we talk about entrepreneurship and scale and growth, is that like you want to be one of those 60 people standing on the front of your board doing, the hang 10 with ease, but actually that is really hard. And I think we all think, oh, that looks easy. There's the wave, let's go do it. But actually, I think it's far more difficult. And what tends to happen is that we're paddling out in the white, just in the wash. And if you're lucky, you're still standing up on that. And that's the average entrepreneur. So I'm butchering this whole entire analogy, but I think it's, what we think is going to be easy. Check, Richard's really going Maui surfers in the background. He's like, that's what he's looking
No, I've got something new. I mean, I will.
What are you going to say?
All right. So I think we've got to fuck up. If you're trying to learn to surf, you know what you don't watch? You don't watch the world's best surfers. And this is the complete and utter fuck up with entrepreneurship and everything in life, is that we look at the top percentile of performers in every discipline to try and find out what we're supposed to do. But if you are the top percentile, you're not the one to follow. You are the outlier. I remember doing a talk once, and there was this coach came in, and did we chat about this last week? We didn't, eh?
Old age.
I'm going to say this a lot. Okay, so what happened was that this top performance coach came in, and he was talking about Michael Phelps, and he showed that Michael Phelps in the Olympics, he did one extra stroke, and that one extra stroke got him the Olympic, and this is what we should do, and we should all be doing that last stroke. And I was sitting there in the audience. This was the night before I was supposed to do a talk. And then I went back to my room, I scrapped my talk, and I rewrote a talk that basically said, this is terrible advice, because we shouldn't be learning from the 99th percentile. We should be learning, if you want to be above average, right? 50% of us in this room right now are below the room's average. That's just how averages work. You need to be looking, if you have above average staff, they're the 51st or 52nd percentile. If you want to be great, you need to look at somebody who's operating at the 54th percentile and mirror them. But we all look at these outliers that have won and think, well, what do they do? But the leap from where we are to where they go is too high. We're trying to jump across the river instead of trying to figure out the next stepping stone. And I think this is a fundamental human flaw. And it's what makes entrepreneurship harder, because our yardsticks are these other businesses. And again, even when you look at businesses like what would Google do or what would Apple do, I'll tell you what they would do. They would spend the money that they have to hire the top 1% from the top 1% universities, which we can't afford to do. So what works for them simply won't work for us. So I think, to go back to your surfing analogy, Brent, we have to be careful about which surfers we watch.
I'd like to add 2 points to that. There's two interesting points. First of all, the average, right? So you kind of I had an interesting experience with this tool in AI. I was just doing a quick look if I could find it again. And what it does is does a bunch of analysis on your face in real time and talks about it. And it starts off and says, how pretty are you? And I don't know. I like it. What kind of scores would you give yourselves out of 10? Anyone?
9.5, probably.
Yeah. Really?
Pretty close.
Rich?
I'm probably a solid 5.5. Eh?
I hate my face. I really dislike my face immensely.
I think I need to share this tool with you guys then.
Share it. Let's go.
So in my head, I've got quite a good looking wife. I know I scored above. So I was giving myself a 6.5 out of 7. I was like, fuck yes. I know I got fat and I got gray hairs and all that kind of stuff. And so I hopped on this tool. I'm using, this is interesting. It gave me a 4.7. That crushed me. Hey? And so it actually started making me think, there's a lot of average. And to your point, that 1%, it's a minuscule. And so the thing that's been bothering me as an entrepreneur, stepping out of the little pond that is South Africa and going into this massive pond where I wander around London on foot and looking at buildings and going, that's the entire banking industry in South Africa. And going, how does one be like a top performer in that space? And I learned a big lesson from that thinking. Plus, I've got a little rock star son in rugby who sat me down. He said, Dad, you know what I'm realizing? In order to become a professional in rugby, I've been trying to hit that 1%. I need to hit the top 10%. I need to be a professional. And I thought, for a 19-year-old kid, and I started thinking to myself, That is a pressure of the entrepreneur. You've got the same way as teenage girls and models and all this kind of strife in your life, which you're looking up to. There's always the 1%. But the reality is, if you can be better than 50% winner, if you can get into that top 10%, which is still millions of people. Now you say, I'm going to be top 10%, you're still smashing it. And it's been the last 3-4 months. I've realigned myself and gone, I'm feeling quite comfortable with going top 10. We can all do top 10%, right? Seemed like a far more achievable goal. And it suddenly made entrepreneurialism a lot easier. And what it taught me is I do not want to be naked on a surfboard surfing with those Hawaiian chicks. That's the lesson I took out of it, I guess.
I think a lot of it comes down to sacrifice. I mean, if you want to be in the top 10%, that's fine, but then that requires a certain level of sacrifice. If you want to be in the top 1%, that's all you dedicate your life to. That's it. So I think it's a choice. And some people want to be mediocre, and that's fine, but they'll never have, the lifestyle that they see many entrepreneurs showcasing on Instagram and so on and so forth. But I do think it's like a choice. Personally, I think you have to just figure out how much is enough for you. Like, why does the 1%, why do you need to be in the 1%? Why do you specifically need to be there? Like, what are your motivations for being there,
So Brett, your facial tool thing, right? What is the base, right? Like, what is the measurement of what they think is good looking and not? Okay, there are some rules around facial, symmetry, etc., etc. But I think I talk about and this is a bit of pat on the back here. Like my single best LinkedIn post ever was a pot shot at Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and it was around the fact that we can talk about how wonderful the model is, but I think that there's a more concentric circle in the middle for entrepreneurs specifically, which is, why the fuck am I in business? Selfishly, what do I want? And that's got nothing to do with the 1% or the growth or how much bigger it's. What does success look like to me? Not what does the 1% look like, right? And I think that if you can get that ticked and you can achieve your own box, then you are successful as an entrepreneur or a business owner, call it what you want, as opposed to the competitive nature of what does big or unbelievably big look like, and then benchmarking against that. So, and you have the power potentially. It's what Matt was saying, that do you want to be in the 1%? And if you do, cool. Most people actually don't. Most people just want to I want to have a really good life, have some time, put my kid through private school, never worry about money, have fun and spend, have a few beers with my mates. Like, that's the reality of the average. But we've been taught, indoctrinated. No, you've got to be aiming for that, hot Hawaiian surfer. And I think that's flawed with a departure point when you start to build your business as to what do you actually want? How much is enough? How much time do you want? And if you can actually be honest with yourself, that number is often a lot lower than what the market is telling you, for sure. It's nowhere near the top 1%.
Yeah, just to add, if my choice was for the Matt Brown Show to be in the top 1% of all podcasts, I wouldn't do it. I would have quit 9 years ago.
Listen, with this quality content, we're never going to get there, right?
Right.
Well, especially if you hear Brent.
awkward silence. Jesus.
What did you do?
What did you do? That's the worst awkward thing ever.
So, I've been thinking about this thing of enough quite a bit, right? So for years, I think I've lived a very, very, my life is fantastic in that it's enough. And I've set my targets on enough. And I talk a lot about being on the ruthless pursuit of enough. But what I've realized now is that there needs to be a second bar. I've been thinking about this quite a lot. I don't know if it's content I could put in a talk or a video or an article, but good enough isn't. Right? So enough means that you don't have any margin for less than enough. You're on the line. What you have to do is simultaneously live at enough, but earn more than enough. And the more than enough you can earn, the better. Your enoughness, your safety of enoughness is entirely dependent on the amount of distance you create between what you earn and what you burn, right? Like in between those two things. And my problem is that when I figured out what my enough was, I kind of put my stake in the ground that, okay, well, this is how hard I have to work, or I don't need to do much more than this. the problem is that it's not sustainable. So, and if you start dropping below your enough, when you live close to that line, it can fuck you up completely. So there has to be this idea of there is the enough. What do I need to make, as an enough has to be different to what do I actually make? What is enough to make? And I don't know what that number is, but I'm guessing 15, 20%. You probably want to be at you should be earning about 15 to 20% more than enough every single month if you want to stay sane. Because lately I've been losing sleep and my life is fantastic, but it's because my earning line and my enough line have been sitting, close to each other. And then you shit yourself.
I want to add to that. So 15, 20% the sort of right number in my head, but that enough figure should also include 15 to 20% saving, right? So your baseline should include fat, and then you should earn that 15 to 20% more, because that gives you real protection, because at least you know that you can sleep at night going, I'm putting money away if that's the way you're operating. And then what does the excess look like? And beyond that, I think it becomes utility.
If you're not investing for your future, you've not hit you're not at enough yet.
Yeah, enough. Now, just quick thing, I saw you did a very quick post, I think it was on LinkedIn, I saw it somewhere, around the earn and burn, but then there was the health one. What was the health one about sweat and something, or? No.
It's just like, I've been saying this for years and years. It's like my favorite little line to tell my kids: spend less than you earn, eat less than you burn. Like, as one single microscript of, if it was one bit of life advice that I wish I'd thought of earlier, it's spend less than you earn, eat less than you burn. Like, but I mean, that's basically everything. Is the out must be less than the in, kind of thing.
So I think this
what happens
all happiness depends on that.
But what happens if you have no control on the spend in your household?
That's a fuck up.
Let me speak to your wife.
That's such a fuck up, dude. Like, so that's another thing. So I guess, like, if your enough is $100,000 a month, say, what I'm hearing from you, Brent, is that you Rich, you have to add 30 to 40% on top of that. So really it's 130 to 140K a month. And then Brett, rather, to your points, if you can't control household spending, you probably should add another 10% at least, right? So actually it's 50% on what your enough is.
And I think that number is actually powered by when you ask your father-in-law's daughter's hand in marriage, right? And depending on what his reaction was like, I think that's how you grade it. In my case, he started crying and sobbing. And I thought that was so special, but he was crying and sobbing with joy as he went, "Your problem now, buddy." Maybe that was more like 25%.
Yeah. So I think this is I want to just tee up where we're going to go with this, because I think this is a good point of departure to talk about Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. So he was on my show about 18 months ago talking about the book. So we'll go there in a moment. Go ahead, Brent.
Okay. I want to remark on one more thing here, is that what is enough, which includes the saving portion, should also include, and I know, Rich, you've been quite good historically. I don't know whether you still do this with the bucket list. Greenland, do the big things in life. Like, what do you want to tick off literally before you die while you still have health, right? So when you're building that enough, you need to include, well, if you're going to do one bucket list thing a year or two bucket thing list a year at 200 grand a pop, whatever it costs to do those things, you've got to build that into your base. Because it's one thing to go, well, what's enough? Enough is school fees, medical aid, and the basics. That's not enough. Enough has to include living your life large, whatever you believe large is, right? And then what's 20% on top of that? So I think you've got to plan for those things as well. Otherwise, you're just trading. You might be saving money, but you're still not enjoying your life potentially.
I think that's true for maybe entrepreneur A-type people, but I think there are some people who'd just be happy if they didn't have to worry. Like, if you're currently sitting there listening to this, worried about your debts and worried about, keeping, the dogs away, then your enough is literally no debt. Like, that's a great place. Like, that was probably my first ever, wow, life is fantastic. Like, I can't tell you the day, like, it happened once, and I kind of invested a bit more, and I kind of went back into debt, and I went out of debt again, and it's really, really freeing. So that would be my first thing. I think when you hit that, at that point, you can start adding in the extra categories, or maybe for some people, maybe you consider having a mortgage, a reasonable debt. For me, I wanted to smash all debts and then kind of build from there. But yeah, that's a tricky one.
But even so, I'm not suggesting that everyone who has a mid-sized salary in a corporate can afford to go to Greenland every year or Iceland, to watch the Northern Lights. But they might want to go. We want to go to the coast once a year. So proportionately, what is their bucket list reasonably within there? So like obviously it depends. But also what I do tend to find is that people do get stuck in that salary band. And I've been fortunate enough to never really have a job. I've always sort of employed myself. But to go out and work a bit harder and figure out how to make an extra couple of grand a month, if you want to, I believe is within most people's actual grasp. I really do. No matter where you are, proportionately to another 5 or 10% of your salary, regardless of your wage bill, I believe is doable with a bit of a hustle. I don't know where you guys think on that.
Just before we go into the business side, which is kind of where profit first goes, I realized something. I guess, I was laughing when Brett said about he's not in control of the spending. My wife considers bargains like a hobby. She wants to buy the cheapest thing and the best thing. Like she loves, that's like her win. I realized that in her house, I'm the secret spender. I'm looking at my desk now. I've got like all of these fidget toy things. And I may or may not just have spent $6,000 on a fidget toy. And I realized like, this is ridiculous. So I installed an app on my phone called Allowance, an Android app. And it's very easy. All it is you've got to basically, it's like a calculator. And then all I've got to do is every time I spend anything, I put in the number, type it one little note about what it is and say enter. And it works backwards from a target. But what has been fundamentally crazy to me is how I keep on not buying things because I don't want to tell the app. And so this idea is the same as like logging calories. When I wanted to lose weight, I logged calories. I don't log my calories because of the calorie count. I log my calories because logging calories makes me aware of what I'm eating. The same way this little Allowance free Android app is making me aware of my spending. So I'm less likely to buy something. I was looking at books the other day and I went to my Kindle Unlimited books instead of going to, what author do I want to spend $14 on? Because I want to see I want to stop spending stupid money. Luckily, my costs are relatively small.
The equivalent in the UK, by the way, is going to the dump to recycle your Amazon boxes. You don't want to do that, so please stop spending on Amazon. It's the most craziest environment.
But I want to remark about something here, is that I came from a background where when I started making money, it was cash, physical hard cash, notes, coins, right? And I think that when we had cash in hand, I think I was less willing to depart with the cash. Where now you pick up the phone and it's tap. I don't even look to see that they're charging me what I think it is. It's just tap. I think we've lost connection with what money is and the ability to spend money and just tap away and enter whatever it is. I think we spend more as a society because it's easier to depart with the money because we're not holding it. And I'm wondering whether that's actually had any kind of effect in terms of people's actual savings or their lifestyle, because they do spend more money because it's just, as Richard goes, it's in front of you. You can be anywhere in the world, buy whatever you want and get it delivered to your door and not see the cash. And I wonder whether psychologically that's had a weird impact on people's spending behavior. I mean, it must have, as an average, in terms of savings.
Well, you don't know where your money goes, right? That's the issue.
Yeah.
Brent, I think you're spot on, first of all. I can't believe I've never thought about that before, and you're right. Second of all, did I tell you guys that my wife slipped me drugs?
I saw the video. I was like, I just saw it on Instagram. I was like, this is unbelievable, especially considering who you are.
Yeah, so I don't smoke, I don't drink, and I don't take any drugs. And I've not done that for over I think the last thing I had was weed, and that was, other than once in the millennial, I had one half bite of a cookie at New Year's Eve, 99. Other than that, from years before that. But the other day we were driving to the shops. The reason I tell you this is my wife had to stop me. I was completely fucked out of my face. And Jazz had to stop me spending 750 euros on a pair of roller skates, not blades even, right? Skates. And there needs to be a button in your phone that you can say, listen, I'm about to get a little bit fucked up. Do not allow me on e-commerce.
Just shop.
Okay. And also, please note that anything I watch for the next 3 hours on YouTube should in no way inform my algorithm. Like, anyway, she basically, we went to get some like CBD stuff for the dogs. She bought some gummies from this place called Baked over the counter. And she said to me, do you want one? We'll have such a nice nap. So I thought she meant CBD, like that CBD stuff. But meanwhile, it's got that other thing, THC or whatever's in it.
Yeah.
So she gets me this thing and I take it. And all of a sudden, like, well, not all of a sudden, within like 30 minutes, I start realizing, wait a minute. Geez, we're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. But I'd given one to my son. He took one as well. He's 20, so that was fine. But I was trying to offer my daughter as well, thinking, oh, this is so nice. Jazz is like, no, baby, you don't want one. My 15-year-old daughter. For like 10 hours, I was completely off my face. Got to be honest, guys. Most fun I've had in ages.
Well, congratulations.
I think that there's something special about that. I mean, it's funny. I haven't smoked in years, but about 6-7 years ago, my wife and I, the one night we in the holiday home, we found a leaf. We found a little bush in the complex. So we picked it and I dried it over a few days and thought, okay, well, this will be fun. Let's try it. Okay, like rolled a little joint, couple of puffs, and the two of us found ourselves in the walk-in pantry. Okay. Laughing, you know, when you're laughing like kids and you don't know why you're laughing for hours, for hours. And it's the same thing, is you're like fairly harmless, actually really, really enjoyable, not an expensive thing to do. And also because I think we're adults now, like I'm not getting off my face and driving anywhere. Like I would probably do it responsibly. And the idea of doing it as I get older is actually becoming more and more attractive to me. I've got a friend who always said, he passed away, but always said to me that on his 80th birthday, he's going to start heroin because he's like, why not? Like at that point, right? But I'm curious to know, like, it's quite common. People I speak to, everyone's microdosing and taking gummies and doing stuff all the time, and I'm always a bit like, bad parenting. But actually, maybe it's not a terrible thing to do every once in a while. Like, you know, once or twice a year, if you're out in the bush somewhere pretty, and take off a gummy and have some fun.
So in Colorado, everything's like available. So there's this massive legalization. It's not even decriminalization story. So here, when I got here, I was like, a friend of mine's like, yeah, you know, let's take some of these gummies to help me sleep. I'm like, okay, cool. So I started taking some edibles, and now and then my wife takes just the CBD ones because it actually helps her with anxiety and stuff like that. Another one of my mates grows mushrooms, so psilocybin. So he gave me like 9 capsules. So he says, I said, how much must I take? He's like, I don't know. He's like, we'll just take 4 and see how it goes. So I take 4, nothing happens. So then, so I'm like, fuck it. Let me just take another 3. So I take another 3, and then shit starts fucking moving, dude. Like, and I'm starting to trip my nuts off, and I'm just chilling at home. It was the most crazy thing. But let me tell you, it's the trend, the legalization trend. I think there's a lot of merit in it, because one of the things that, and you know, later on in the day, my family came home, because they came home, whatever, and that time alone on psilocybin actually gave me perspective on my life, like all the journey that I'd been on, my relationship with my wife, my kids, all that stuff. I actually felt like there's no other like substance that can give you true perspective or open your eyes to truth that you would never ordinarily see. And in the US, using psilocybin in therapeutic conditions with the therapist is actually a big thing. I interviewed this guy on my Secrets of Fail series. So he's 35 years old. He's got a 9-year-old and 2 twins of 7. He's been together with his partner for 22 years. And they were questioning whether or not they should get divorced. So he was telling me he went to this psilocybin retreat that basically you go there to really process your shit. And I said to him, yeah, but why didn't you just do marriage counseling? He's like, fuck that. He's like, why must I spend thousands of dollars doing, marriage therapy once a week and whatever? And there's a merit for it and what have you. But he's like, dude, I just wanted to get to the truth fast. So he goes to this retreat, and he's a big boy. He's like 6'5". He weighs like, I don't know, 140 kilos or something. And apparently the therapist gave him 9.5 grams of psilocybin. But he was telling me that the process that he went through basically gave him put him into a place of truth and perspective, where he actually went back to his wife and says, I'm actually done. I want a divorce. Whereas before, and in therapeutic conditions, like even my wife and I, we go to a marriage, we're going to a marriage counselor at the moment. I find like marriage counselors, they're trying to protect the relationship. You know, they're trying to, and it's like, well, but what do you actually want as a man, as a husband? What do you actually want as a woman, as a wife? And I think getting to the truth of those things, the resentments and all those sorts of things, and what you aspire for your future as an individual first, and then how you want to represent that as a partnership in marriage. I find like the traditional classical ways of getting to a couple to get to answers, like, do we stay together? Do we not? Whatever. I find it's too fucking long. It takes too long. It's too slow. It's too frustrating. Whereas what I'm hearing in my senses from this chap is there's different now, because of the legalization and access to things like psilocybin, and even for guys from the military, like post-traumatic stress syndrome and all this kind of stuff, they're combining psilocybin with MDMA and all this kind of stuff. And it's creating real results. So I'm all for this whole space, because since the 1960s, basically it was the US government was like, drugs are bad, Nancy Reagan, whatever, and then it basically, that was it. All research stopped, blah, blah, blah. And now that's all opening up again some, 60 years later.
Interesting.
Yeah, only one drug supply is
super exciting.
Alcohol, right? They're the ones who won the battle
And
politically.
that's one of the worst ones.
Yeah, that is the
because
worst
it's
one.
taxable.
Oh,
No,
so
it's the worst one.
yeah, jeez. I mean, so part of me is thinking, this feels like a midlife crisis center, but I think we are going through that. Both my kids are empty nesting, and so I kind of relate to everyone. There's so much change in life, so like it's fun and scary. But is scary not fun, and is fun not scary?
But Brett, that midlife crisis, I mean, if you look at academically what a midlife crisis is, that first phase of life, you find your place in the world. You're a teenager. You figure out who you are in your space. Second space is you understand your career. You become a father. You become a husband. That's your thing. When the kids leave, suddenly you're left with your wife and yourself. And midlife crisis is that you don't know what to do with yourself, so you go back to your teenage years and you buy the Porsche and you shag the blonde, right? That's midlife crisis. Actually, what you're doing is you're moving into the third and final phase of your life, which is figuring out what your purpose is and why you're here. And it tends to happen when your kids don't need you anymore. And I'm not saying financially, but they don't need you to wipe their ass, metaphorically or physically anymore. And then you're trying to figure out, well, who am I
to wipe
now?
my ass.
Yeah, that's I said that to my wife. Unimpressed. So that happens when you marry young. Actually, Richard and I, interesting enough, is that Richard's a year older than me, and his wife is a year older than my wife, and they're both 12 or 13 years younger. Is that right?
10 years. I'm 49 in next 2-3 months, and Jazz turned 38 a few months ago.
Okay, so yeah, I'm a slightly bigger gap. But young wives gonna have to wipe someone's ass one day. It's gonna be mine, I think.
Really?
The way it goes. And Matt, just one more thing as well, interesting around that the marriage counseling. So I don't do marriage counseling, but I do a lot of counseling for business owners and partners. And often what happens is that first engagement when two partners come into the room, the question is, I often listen to them, but very often is, guys, you're here for one of two reasons. You actually do love each other and need to make this work, or you're breaking up and haven't come to terms with that yet. And that's the departure point that needs to be made. And I found that probably in counseling, people avoid that harder conversation of, oh, you actually have to get a divorce and have this mediation. It's better to go, oh no, like let's try and fix it as the obvious place. And that isn't always the right solution. So I would imagine that for marriage counseling, people go there because they want to fix it, but they aren't aware that there's an option in marriage counseling to go, actually, I want out, and this is the way I want that facilitated. And I think that should be brought up as part of the mediation or the engagement. Anyway, it's my 2 cents worth.
Mhm.
I do sometimes
ex and
feel
I-
it is like counseling with you, Brent.
My
Good.
ex and I, that Brent knows, we went to a marriage counselor in Tambourtskloof. We walked in, we were getting on fine. It was like rough. We went there, we did one session. We decided to go after that to Cafe Neo in Mullet Point. And sitting there right after that counseling session, the lady basically made us realize in one session that we just wanted, our victory conditions were so completely different that the compromise that either of us would have to make would be too great. We were like 19 and 17 when we met, that we went for a walk along the prom, and we decided, okay, how's this going to work? We shared a lawyer. We, everything was very, very amicable, and that was it. It was, that's where it got to. The counselor actually did show us, and it was one marriage counseling session, and then we decided that we didn't have to do this. And one of the biggest mistakes for me is that we have this theory that constitutes failure. And then I look and I think, but my two children, which are, my greatest thing that I've ever achieved, came out of that thing. How can anything that produced my two children ever be considered a failure? And at one point, it was years later, I stopped thinking of my marriage as a failure. I started thinking of it as a successful exit. I managed to leave a relationship that I was in with somebody that wasn't working, that would have been a compromise for both of us. I managed to walk away from that and actually be in a position in which it was like, okay, we've got these great kids, we parted as friends, and it's all good. It's like Missing Link. Missing Link has been around 26 years. If Missing Link ended tomorrow, the idea of saying that business was a failure is ludicrous to me, because for like 26 years, it's paid for my entire life. We have this weird concept of what failure means.
Agree. Interesting. Okay, let's talk about this book, because you guys have both mentioned it. Sorry, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Do you want to finish that thought, Rich?
Sorry,
I was going to say, because I was going to take it a different way, because this goes to your tweet this morning, Matt, but we can come back to that.
No, let's do it now. Let's do it now.
Okay, so I'm going to read a tweet that Matt wrote this morning that got me thinking. He said, and by the way, I completely agree with it. You live 90% of your life suffering. For the 10% of life that gives you hope, joy, you live 9% of your life suffering for the 10% of life that gives you hope, joy, fulfillment, and sometimes happiness. The 90% is where you're finding meaning, and the 10% is where you find purpose. And I thought we can break that down into bits, because meaning and purpose is a worthwhile discussion as well. But that first bit about the fact that life is inherently suffering, I never used to believe that, but now I absolutely do. Like, life is not easy. And it seems to be universally true that shit, guys, you've really chosen a downer episode right now. Next time we need to get some of Matt's capsules.
There's
real shit,
there's real value. There's real value.
Totally.
And I'm curious to know what prompted Matt to say that. But I mean, this morning I had a quick breakfast with someone I think most of you know is a friend of mine, Mark Hamburger, who by all accounts hasn't worked properly in years. He's retired. He's a stay-at-home dad with a beautiful 2-year-old. And on the surface, his life looks amazing, and it really is amazing. But then we have these little conversations where I go, I'm living on these because antihistamines because my skin gets welts. He's living with cream because he's got eczema. And it's these little things that are always there, always on, right? Which make your life quite difficult. And those, they come and go. And when life is good, you don't stop and recognize it, right? When things are smooth, you don't stop and go, oh my God, this is peace. Like, look at this tranquility. It's so joyous. You don't. But when things get a little bit difficult, then the wheels will come off, right? But I find that also as we get older, and maybe it's just an age thing in your body actually genuinely aging, is that shit stops working the way it used to. Your recovery time is different. My eyes are not what they used to be. My memory of people's names to faces is definitely getting worse. And it becomes more difficult. So, and I think that we don't realize that like, genuinely this, the youth is wasted on the young, how true that really is. Because as we get older, our body starts failing, and that becomes a separate challenge. And then there's the reality of supporting family, making enough and more than enough, and making sure that we're trying to enjoy the more than enough. I think that constant struggle is a struggle. I don't think it's easy for anyone. And people who claim that their life is amazing, they're going through a period or a phase, or they're a bit delusional. I don't know anybody that I think has been genuinely joyous for extended periods of time ever in my life. And extended period of times, 6 months or more. I've never seen that, not without some level of hardship. So I'm curious to know, does anyone here know anyone today who you think that person is genuinely happy all the time, or genuinely pleased with life, or find life frictionless? Like, do you know anybody?
I know some heroin addicts that would be happy all the time. But otherwise, for everybody else, no.
Yeah. I really thought that the authors of anything to do with happiness were happy all the time. You know, right?
No, they said look at their Amazon rankings every day to see if more people are buying their books, and they're miserable every time.
And as it starts decreasing, their happiness levels follows that trend. People are going to stop buying that book.
So I think the first mistake is thinking of happiness as a state. And I think happiness is an event, right? So we have to understand that happiness is when people say, you know, what do you want for your kids? Oh, I just want them to be happy. No, you can't get that. What you want is them to have the access to happiness at a reasonable amount of times. Right. Yeah. So I want my kids to be able to find happiness. And let me tell you why this is important. First of all, to your point, Brent, it's a weird thing. It's correlation. Like British people appreciate beautiful sunny days a lot more than South African people do. Right. Because you start looking for those things. So you got to try and get those moments and spikes, and it's all relative to where you're looking at it. But I think that the world right now is treating suffering as if it's depression. So teenagers and kids, we look at the states of depression and things that exists across the board, and everybody's saying, oh, I'm very, very depressed. And it's a kind of standard, often self-diagnosis. But what if people realize, no, that's the default state. The default state is that life is difficult. This idea that we were told, the biggest fuck up is that we told our kids it should be good and should be easy and should be nice. Kids who grew up in a war era knew that life was hard, right? So life is hard. The more you grow up in a peacetime, the more likely you will be to be depressed when life throws you curveballs. We owe it to our children to let them understand that life is work, and work is hard, and the reward for work is happiness. So happiness is a reward that you earn through your endeavors. The problem is, if we are educating kids, and social media is showing kids, and even ourselves, even adults, that actually everybody else is happy, happiness is the default state, then you look at yourself and you think, well, I'm below that. So I'm sub-happy. Therefore, I am broken. Therefore, I am depressed. I'm not depressed. Life is just correctly fucking hard.
My favorite.
Can I add to that?
Karl Marx. Favorite quote, Karl Marx: "Life is a struggle." Like, that's what it is. It's a struggle every day. It's a struggle. That's what it is. Brett.
There's a view to life that I've always held from a very young age, and I don't know, like I'm not into star signs or anything like that. I'm a Libran, and I like balance, and I kind of look at life as when I'm getting fucked up, which is often, for whatever way, physically, mentally, whatever you go through. I like to look at that state as that's a great place to be in. And the more fucked up it is, be more excited about it. And so when I'm going through this incredibly rough moments, and somehow there's always a moment that gets rougher. You always think, I've experienced it now, and you can think of the most drastic things can happen to you in life. And so, like, over the last 30 years of my life, I've always taken, I'm at this worst pace in my life that I personally have experienced, in the dips of lows, and it doesn't compare to so many people in the world, and it's not a comparison. I'm taking it from my own point of view. I actually get happy. I'm excited, maybe less happy, but more excited. I'm like, yes. Because I'm looking at the differentiator between that, when I have gotten over that hurdle, how the exhilaration, the joy that comes with it. And so I do think happiness is a state, but I think we have to celebrate when we're at that low, so we can gauge that level of happiness. So I do look at all these guys who are like, I'm always happy, you know, everything's good, everything's amazing on social media. Fuck, why don't we celebrate when we are just having the shittest time?
Because it's shit. Because it's shit.
Right?
It's really hard. Like if
yes, you can only get better.
I think you can celebrate that after the fact a lot easier. You can realize the lessons and things easier, but it's very, very hard when you're in it.
You're going through it, right? But imagine.
Totally.
Yeah.
Very quickly, what date is your birthday?
23rd of October. On the cusp of Libran.
I am
like 5 a.m. in the morning.
7 days older. Exactly.
Who's this? What?
I popped out into the world 7 days before you.
Oh, wow.
We're literally 1 week apart. Exactly.
How's that?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I popped out in Santon Clinic, though.
Yeah, I was in Glasgow.
So
I think it's hard. You'll go, Matt.
Yeah, no, you go, dude.
No, I just think it's hard to I think when shit is really rough, like I enjoy crisis situations. I feel like those are what I'm made for. But those are when there is a crisis and I'm in control over it. That's not bad for me. That's good. I enjoy that. But if I'm in the middle of some form of tragedy or difficulty, I find it difficult to celebrate. Like I got injured the other day in jiu-jitsu, and I'm going to have to take quite a significant amount of time off. And like, there's nothing for me to celebrate that I can see right now, but maybe later I'll be able to look back at that.
So, just
quick thing, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Just I know that you're the host.
It's your show, dude. You do it.
Calm your shit, okay?
You do your thing.
So it's the Dalai Lama talks about joy, right? Finding joy. Like that's what they aim for, which is a very flat, almost always on line. Then I think what happens, Richard, is what you're saying is that happiness is the spark that happens at a frequency, and it depends on the frequency, but it pierces through joy and then dips down below joy. So I think that we all live in this world below joy, right? Like we're not joyous all the time. We live below joy, which doesn't mean we're unhappy or depressed, as you said. We just live below that level of that utopian joy. And I think what you were saying earlier on around the ability to bring those sparks closer. So the frequency of happiness, opportunities, the more frequent you can make that, I think that the better your life will be. And I think part of that is going back to what Brett was saying, is having to realize that you will pierce back down that level of joy in order to have the opportunity to find the next happiness spark. And I think as long as you realize that's the frequency of your life, and some people have lots and lots of happiness, and some guys have massive gaps between those sparks. And the bigger those gaps are, the more sort of depressed you are in your mind, or you're viewed by society at large. So I agree with you, Rich. How do you give your kids the greatest opportunity to have more frequency of spark? And that's exposing them to new things and potentially, forcing them out into the world and discover new things potentially, because that's quite exciting and that gives you joy.
So just to add to that, so that's why I bought a KTM 890 Adventure. It's just because that's my thing. Like, I don't have any clients, no kids, no wife, no one, just me on the bike, like that for me. And then going adventuring through the Rocky Mountains, that's my idea of a happiness hit. And I can go whenever the fuck I want. So if I wanted to go today, I can cancel my meetings and go. I wouldn't actually do that, but but I have the choice to do that if I needed to. And the other thing I wanted to say, just to add to all your points, is I've been running this series called Secrets of Fail, and I've been talking to CEOs all about their failures in business. And I wrote the introduction to the book yesterday, and I made the intro basically paints the picture of social media, to your point, Rich, where if you go to LinkedIn, you start scrolling down the timeline, everyone's like, what do you see? You see awards won, new clients won, you see mergers, acquisitions, exits, new job promotions. So these posts by design are there to project an image of success. So to your point, Rich, it's the same on Instagram. It's just different. In business, it's obviously LinkedIn. So behind all of that, in the corners of those stories, there's a shit ton of pain. There's a lot of suffering. And I think that the social media has created this perception that everybody is successful, where, where everybody here and a lot of people listening to us will know that it takes 15 years of suffering to become an overnight success. And I just feel like it's a problem. It's a counter narrative, Rich.
Oh, fuck, I'm out.
Yeah, dude. Like, it's a counter
No one
narrative.
told me.
It's a narrative that actually has to change, because that's what you said, Brett. Like, why don't we celebrate our failures? Like, why aren't we looking forward to overcoming that? Oh, yeah, it sucks at the time or whatever. But it's this idea that everybody is successful when they're actually not. I mean, like, I hate creative advertising awards. I fucking hate them. I literally will unfollow people. I'll remove the connection if they're promoting an award that they won at the Lurries or some shit, because I think it's the biggest circle jerk ever. It's like, okay, great. Are you really successful? You won an award in South Africa for advertising? Come on, man. That's like the bottom 50%. It's not like the top 1%. It's not even the top 10%. If you win something in Cannes, maybe. If you win something in Cannes, the fucking Grand Prix, not number 2, number 3, not the silver or the bronze, the Grand Prix. If you win the Grand Prix in Cannes for advertising, then you promote that shit. But you see what I mean? And I think everyone's kind of like, and all like, look at our latest campaign that we did for this, and I'm so proud of this and blah, blah. It's like, okay, dude. Yeah, it's great for you, but you're just adding to this feel of, and this perception at scale that everybody's winning. And so, and when you talk to these guys, they're running $1 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion companies, and they're hurt, right? They're not successful. And I think the way that we measure, going back to our first point, right? The way that we measure what success is, it's so predicated upon the top 1%, where there's so much success right across that scale, and I think, again, the reason why I put that tweet out was because I'm thinking about secrets of fail and the suffering of building a business and then trying to manage your personal life and your marriage and your kids and all this stuff. And going through shit myself with my own marriage, at the moment, and just being really deep in the psyche of what it means to live a successful life. So I do believe 90% of your life is suffering, and you work, to your point, Rich, so that you can create a 10% of joy, fulfillment, and sometimes happiness, not all the time. It's sometimes. And then the suffering is where you find meaning. And I read the book by Viktor Frankl, I think his name is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Everybody has to fucking read that book, dude. Change your life.
Yeah.
It's all about the concentration camps and stuff. And he was a psychologist, and he literally writes about his experience and experience of other people in those camps. So suffering is where you find meaning, but purpose is when you find, like, when your kids get born, or when you do get married on the day that you get married or whatever, or when you do have a successful exit, then suddenly you're like, oh, fuck, my life has purpose. But then it goes again. And then you're back on that 90% suffering train.
Matt,
so I think the two swear words.
Yeah, go.
No, because you go, because I'm going to take us a wee bit.
So the social media piece is interesting, is that I'll use my grandfather on my dad's side, who was an accountant for many years. His whole life, he was an accountant. And he ran his little practice. And I say little because it was him, and it wasn't like it wasn't the 100-man business, it was him. But for many, many years, people go like, what did your grandfather do? And I was like, oh, he ran a good little business, right? He put 4 kids through school. He had 4 sons, and looked after his wife. They had a beautiful house in Cyril Dean, and at the age of 102, he passed away. Did he have a successful business? I think he did. He put his kids through school. He gave them what they needed. They never ever didn't get supper at the table. And going to Richard's 26 years of Missing Link. If someone said to me, was it a good business? I'm like, it was a great business. And yes, there's been ups and downs potentially, and then there were pockets of cash and a little bit of starvation here and there, but overall good business. And I think that social media has given us this, what is a good business and what does success look like from a business perspective. If you think about your grandparents and you ask, well, were they successful in their business, being employees or business owners? The answer is probably always yes. And none of them made billions of rands, or we probably wouldn't be on this call, right? Like let's be honest. So I think it's been tainted with what we think successful looks like, and then bringing it back into the family environment. I think marriage is work. Marriage is often struggle as well. There's no question about it. But you get through it, and that's part of the struggle. You have to get through the lean years, whatever those are, And at the end, if you're still friends and you have healthy, well-balanced kids, I think you've got a successful marriage. You've been successful at it. It doesn't mean it's easy. Like, I don't look at anyone's marriage and go, they've got it easy, it's amazing. I think most people struggle at phases, maybe cyclically. But marriage and life and bringing up kids and business, none of it is easy. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't know, Brent. I look to that, I can't remember his name now, the guy on social media who's the next poker player with his 52 wives that follow him around in bikinis. It seems like a successful marriage to me. Bulgarian. Like, well, what are you talking about, Brent? Like, come on.
I think the point around marriage, though, in life
1%.
is the same relative to, and again, we can't gauge. There is always some people who have bucked the trend. Just remember, we have to take anybody's life wholesale, right? You can never just take the attributes of people that you like. You've got to take their entire life and lose everything you've got to live like them. But marriage is probably a lot like that. If we started calibrating marriage, because I think the most important thing we have to do is give people a more reasonable calibration. The more the world understands that life is inherently difficult and, there are scattered moments of happiness. And, you talk about spikes, Brent. I think what we want is that amplitude to be more wavy, if we could. But the more we understand that for marriage, for business, for everything, the happier we are, the more content we are. Okay, because yes, shit is bad, but every now and then it'll be good. And as long as that ratio is good. I was listening to a venture capitalist, and he says they measure the ratio, the total ratio of, how much money they make versus how much money they lose, and that's what they look at. And he's at 21, so 21, more than he loses $1 million or whatever, or $1 billion or whatever. And I think that's what it is. If you understand that your score is supposed to be, 5 units of disappointment for every 1 unit of, or struggle, not disappointment, just difficulty for every 1 unit of joy and happiness. If you understand what that ratio is supposed to be, and I don't know what it is, but when you understand what it is, all of a sudden you realize, hey, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I think it's bad because everybody else looks like they're at 10 points of happiness to 1 point of difficulty. We need to educate ourselves. We need to calibrate that our marriages, our businesses, our lives, our things are actually work with, you work 30 days, you get your pay 1 day. And then the other thing I want to raise in this thing, and now I just searched our transcripts and I don't think we mentioned this, but I'm convinced that there's a direct correlation between happiness and hobby. And I don't think we take it nearly seriously enough, right? We need hobbies are recreational obsessions. They're an opportunity. Matt, you just described one now, going for a ride in the Rockies. That is a recreational obsession. It's something where I think what fools do is the worst, most depressing thing in the world is when someone says, oh, I just want to leave work and switch off. No, man, you've got to leave work and switch over, right? You have to switch over to the thing that excites you next. So other than the fact that I'm just injured, I would have been going to jiu-jitsu as soon as this call is finished. That would have been really exciting for me, right? But instead I'll play a board game or something. Like, we have to switch to something. And you've got to be as excited for that. If you're just simply finishing your work day, going home, sitting in front of Netflix, looking after the kids, only if it's work and then work, where is the joy? So, and I think hobbies are not taken seriously enough. Hobbies are thought of as this, like almost childlike thing. I think we really, really need to understand the correlation between hobbies and happiness. Thoughts?
I agree.
Rich, so the question I have, go for it.
No, I was just going to say the tough part's figuring out what hobbies you actually will give you that ability to switch over.
That's the joy, finding them. And you don't have to keep them forever.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brent.
So, for me, usually, and I've done this is my 4th business, and the first year in my wife's eyes again is that I'm actually doing a hobby the whole time, because if you're not making any money, surely it's a hobby. So surely as an entrepreneur, the first year of every business is a hobby, and it's all fun, isn't it? Or am I misunderstanding what a hobby is?
Your money. When you take funding and you've got a VC behind you going, here's my cash, where's my return? No longer hobby, right? So I think that you're right. That is the joy of running your own business, is that there's a certain amount of autonomy that you do have the ability to play in your business. And I'm not saying, obviously, there's commitments and things you need to make it work, but there's definitely an element of play which you should be enjoying always, not just in that first year. You should always be enjoying elements of it. And trust me, is that we talked about, what did Matt say, the first 14 years. The first 15 years of my business were pumping out cash. It was amazing. I hated my life. There was no joy. There was no experimentation. There was no fun in the business, right? And then as I decided, no, fuck it, I'm out, that's when I lost all the money. And I actually had the most fun I say most fun. I spent a lot of the cash in the last 2 years getting out of my business, doing stuff I should have been doing when I actually had positive cash flow. There's no question about it. But I want to go back here. So Matt, I saw this post. Well, you sent it through WhatsApp, I think, right? You sent a WhatsApp about you camping on the KTM. And I can take pot shots at the KTM as a bike, but absolutely 2 wheels, camping, cooking. Like I tell you now that I discovered something this time last year in September. I went away with about 40 guys on a motor camping trip. Never camped.
That was when you were supposed to come snowboarding with me, and then you canceled at the last minute.
That was this year.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
Second one. But for me, the ability to get on your motorbike, turn off from the world, pitch a tent, in my case, a hammock, have a beer and watch the sun go down has to be one of the most enjoyable things that I never, ever thought I would enjoy. Like I never thought I would enjoy it. It's one of the most attractive things. And so much so that for 20 years of my life, I've been snowboarding with Richard and the crew. And it was a toss-up. Do I go to the Karoo on my motorbike for a week, or do I go for a week snowboarding? And it was just like, no, I'm taking the motorbike trip, because it was actually more selfish for me, completely selfish for me. And it's a hobby, and I'm deep into it. If you go to my Facebook page, like my Facebook, it's basically motorbikes and camping. That's all there is now. I'm obsessed with it.
Brent, Matt, if we get to 50 episodes of Hold My Beer, we're doing it in the Rockies with Matt on rent. We'll rent some motorbikes and we'll go for a ride and we'll record on the road. I mean, let's commit. Let's make that a victory condition to work towards. Yeah. Because I mean, why not?
Yeah, that's I'd love to do that. I've been doing this for so fucking long. I've done so many Zoom things. We've done almost 750 episodes now. And I'm very hungry to do it differently. You know what I mean? Especially with like YouTube. There's nothing more boring than watching us for you on shit. Like everyone's just listening rather than watching us. And I think you must have seen a few of those things on YouTube, right? Like where there's comedians in cars or, things like this. It creates a form of entertainment. But I think, yes, I'm absolutely sold. Victory condition. If you do 50 of these things, it'll be.
But just hang on. Can I do the maths here? If we do one a month, how old are we going to?
We'll be about 75.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe it doesn't have to be 50. We can decide. I bought these Mevo cams. I don't know if you guys have heard about them, but they're fantastic. It's super easy. So there's a camera on each, like I've got 3 of them on each person. They each connect with their own mic and everything. And it automatically chops and changes. So I've got gear ready for it. I've been looking for a purpose. Wow. Now it's there. Maybe we have to do it fewer. Maybe it's next year.
Next summer in Colorado.
Can I just say the following quickly, just in terms of the timing here? I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but it's now public knowledge as of a week ago. I'm having another baby. By not me personally, obviously, but we're having another baby. We're having a baby early next year, okay? Which means that the 49-year-old with a baby. So my concern here is that I don't know whether I'm going to get a pink slip to go motorbiking in Colorado for quite some time.
You are not. You are not.
Yeah.
Are you joking?
I have a laptop.
I'm serious.
Congrats, bugger.
Wow, dude.
Congrats,
that's very exciting for you. Congratulations, bro.
Thank you. And now the whole world knows,
fucking hell. Let's explore this. This is a good topic. So 49 and a baby.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait, are you 49 already? You're not?
No, I'm turning 49 next year, yeah.
Right.
48. So 49.
Yeah, so you'll be 49
in a couple of weeks.
When you drop the sprog.
Oh.
When are you due? Because now I'm thinking we may have to time our motorcycle trip as a baby moon.
Well, Well, I'm
Brent-
due in Feb somewhere.
Yeah.
So
So
Not gonna
Brent,
happen, bro.
when he or she is 18, you're going to be 67.
thank you. I didn't do that math already. I've worked it out. So I have to work for a very long time, guys. I'm 25 years away of education still, right? Like that's a reality. Because like those are real costs for a period of time. Medical studies, yada yada, car, whatever it's. So I have to find joy. Talk about joy. It's like Rich is like a deer in the headlights. Like, oh my god,
I'm like, fuck, dude. That's crazy, man.
Richard's son works in Richard's business. My second kid is not even breathing yet. Like it's a long way away. It's a big gap.
Is this by choice?
I'm worried
though?
about
You obviously
grandchildren.
wanted a kid.
Say that again?
Was it planned?
Yes, it was planned. Yeah.
Amazing.
And,
Then it's only a celebration.
No, absolutely. But it's a big thing. So, but it's interesting because what it does, I came into this call, we talked just before we jumped on around understanding your fragility of life and getting to 50, you realize how much time you actually have, how many good summers you have left in you potentially. Like the reality about snowboarding, which is that like maybe I've got 10 or 15 seasons left in me, maybe, right? Which is not a hell of a lot, right? Like that's what that is. Same with motorbikes. Is like how many more years can I ride a big motorbike for? So understanding that and now going, I'm going to be a parent again and going through that phase. And hopefully they do keep you younger. Hopefully that's true. But I do think what I'm going through now is looking at the next 20 years of my life and planning for these things and realizing how much is enough, how much is more, what are the events I want to do, what can I do with a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and my daughter's turning 7 soon. Like we're still in that phase. And I know like Brett, your kids are obviously much older. Matt, yours are slightly closer to mine. But, there's pros and cons and restrictions to what one can do with their life when you have a baby or young kids. But, it's also about enjoying your life and trying to be selfish in some ways to do stuff like motorbike trips in Colorado and balancing that. And I feel like I'm rounding this whole conversation up, but it's around finding joy, finding enough money, being a good husband, making sure that the business delivers enough to do all of these things, and trying to be successful at life, right?
I'm jealous of you. I've been going through this kids all leaving broodiness. I'd love to have a little one right now. I'm just envious of you, that cuddles up to you and gives you love and just, I'm excited for you. I think it's like brilliant.
Thank you.
Right? Just wow. Yeah.
I don't feel that at all.
I'm like, I'm dead there, buddy.
I'm so glad I'm happy for you because it's what you want. That would be as close for me to being like, that would probably be it would be a really, really, really horrific turn for me. My entire life was planned to have children early because my parents had children early my dad was younger than me when I finished school and I'm the youngest. They got their life back at that stage and they're still young enough to enjoy it. So my entire life strategy was that. After I got divorced, before I met Jazz, I'd gone for the snip because I knew that that's what I wanted. So I wanted to take it off the table before I met anybody. That had to be the way that this was done. But that's what's a beautiful thing about life is that we all get to choose what is your own highest excitement. And, Brent, like we were talking about hobbies and things to look forward to and things like this. This is an incredible thing to look forward to. What I do think, though, is knowing like Suki, for example, and I guess one of the things with you choosing to be a later father because you got a younger wife, I'm sure wanted a kid as well, is that I would imagine that part of the agreement is that you can't stop being you in the way. So yes, we can go for a motorcycling trip in the Rockies, when the kid is born and 2-3 months old. But if we're talking about summer 25, that's an absolute option.
Sure.
Because yes, the kid is a year old, but the one beautiful thing is you're old enough and wealthy enough now to make a plan to support your wife with you going and doing that the same way you would support her. So I don't think it's an end of one thing, right?
Oh no, absolutely. And the reality is that I mean, Suki, that's my wife, right? She's been incredibly supportive. She's never said no to anything. I mean, you know, I want to go spend a week on my bike in the Karoo. Cheers. Like, it's never been, don't do that, ever. She's never said anything no. And my gut says if the kid was a few months old and I said I want to go away for a week, she'd probably support that too. It's probably my own guilt that would go like, oh, I'm being a bad, you know, husband, father to do that.
You would be.
But I mean, absolutely. But I mean, when I think about when I had my daughter, within a year, I was back snowboarding with the guys. So it wasn't like my life went away. Yes, there's that little, you know, probably that dark period for the first few months where you lack of sleep and doing what you have to do. But, you know, I think we know what that looks like, and you get through it and you realize, as Brett's pointing out, how quickly that happens. Like, you blink and I can see now my daughter's 7. It's mind-blowing how quickly that happened. So yeah, proportion and perspective, I think, is a big thing. And it is what it is, right? Like, I decided to get married at 40 and have my first kid at 41. That was a choice. So I can't take away the fun that I had in the 20 to 40. Like, I had a lot of fun with my wife in that period of time, which I think that if I was married at 20 would have been different. So that's life, right? And then we talk about the 1%. I joke about the fact that I'm going to be a 50-year-old with a toddler. And then I hear stories of guys 65 having babies, you know, and I'm just like, what? Like, what? But that's their call, you know. So they're the extreme, not 50. So I think that's
yeah. So on that bombshell, it's time to end. I have to run back-to-back shows today. Brett, Brent, Rich, always a pleasure chatting to you guys. This is the first Matt Brown Show episode in a decade where not a single stitch or word has been spoken about in terms of business. Not
Very
one
little.
business conversation. Not one. So
and the three topics that Rich raised at the beginning to go, like, we can talk about these things.
Didn't happen.
None of them happened, right? So bank them.
Park them.
Oh,
for next time.
no, we did. We started with the one with Matt's tweet. So we started with one and we went on. Yeah.
Good.
So I will bank these in my little note-taking app, and we'll get back to it again soon. Hey, Brett, thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate you.
Guys. Absolute pleasure inviting me.
Before we go, show them your beer. Show them your beer thing.
I've been like, you know, right? This
Very
is
nice.
what I plan to drink.
Yeah.
Why weren't you drinking during the show? The hell?
I felt bad, right? You know, you're like, oh, you don't want me hammered.
That was on my Roy boss.
Yeah, next time we actually all start drinking on this show, because that's going to make it real fun.
Rich will take some edibles. That'd be even more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got videos, guys. Oh.
Awesome. All right, guys. Love you lots. All the best. Speak to you again soon. Ciao.